Is this a great game or what? An offseason Hall of Fame celebration edition, because we have 3 new Hall of Famers joining in Cooperstown, New York this summer. I'm Jeff Kurkjian with my Hall of Famer dad, Tim Kurkjian. We're talking Ichiro Suzuki, Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. We're going to get to those amazing careers shortly. But Dad, how are you?
I'm great, Jeff. I love the Hall of Fame induction day. I know how important this is for these players. I've been a voter for 34 years. It's the greatest honor and the greatest privilege I have to be a part of the process of getting players into the Hall of Fame. It is a remarkably difficult exercise. However, I love it. It drives me crazy because all I want to do is get it right. But when I see 3 guys go in like this, it's a great day for baseball, especially when it's 3 guys of this high of a character.
Yeah, we want to dive into their careers and some great stories. But Dad, I just want to show you something really fast. This is it right here. This is I dropped it. I almost broke it. This is the fantasy football championship ring that I have won. Oh, yeah. First time ever winning a fantasy football championship. I've been in the same league since I was in the 7th grade. I'm 31 years old. Do the math. That's my career as a fantasy football player as a legal adult of 18 years, and I've never won a championship until now, and I have the ring to prove it. I just needed to show it off because I'm so gosh darn proud.
Jeff, what was the ceremony like when they awarded you the championship ring? Was it a big ceremony or tell me about it?
I think you know the answers to that. When do us men ever do anything big if there aren't women involved to help plan it? So we were sitting around watching college football, and my buddy who won it last year, Tyler, was like, oh, hold on. And he reached around into his pocket. He was like, here you go, man. Congrats. And everyone's like, yeah, good job. And then we just kept watching. That was it.
Did you win any money?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's $100 buy-in. So after all was said and done, after the buy-in, I think I won $480. Not bad.
That's great, Jeff. So glad to hear that. Hey, I have a question for you, Jeff, before we get to the Hall of Famers. Talk about pointless questions. So Carson Keenahan's 4th birthday was the other day, and he had 4 different birthdays. You were at one of them, the family birthday. This was a birthday to allow his friends from school and others to come over. There were probably 30 people in the house. 2 of them, and I was one, wore shoes during the birthday party. Everyone else took their shoes off when they entered Kelly's house. My question to you, Jeff, and believe me, I just want to understand, is it now protocol that when you enter somebody's house, you take your shoes off? Because I grew up at a time where we never took our shoes and socks off. Never. My father, God bless him, used to say, hey, you got a game tonight. We don't want you to break a toe slamming it into the couch. Keep your shoes on. And again, there was one guy, a grown-up, a father, and me. We were the only 2 in the room in the big house that had shoes on. Explain, please.
Well, I think, I grew up in your home as a shoes-on family. That's upstairs, that's downstairs, that's on carpet. And I married my wife, Emily, who was a shoes-off family growing up because they didn't want to track in anything from outside into their rugs and their carpets, right? And sometimes it's a cultural thing. My buddy Pankaj, he's an Indian guy, shoes off at the door. You do not walk around our house with shoes on. In fact, a lot of my buddies, bare feet around their own home. And it's shocking to me, but I don't know if this is a now thing, Dad. I think this is more a cultural thing that us Kurkjians were just not accustomed to in your home growing up, in my home growing up, obviously. And now I take a lot of heat from my wife. If I ever bring my shoes upstairs on my feet, I have to bring them downstairs so the carpet will last longer. And, as a fiscally responsible adult now, I kind of understand it. And so to that point, Kelly and Mark made the switch recently to going from a shoes on in the house to now a shoes off. And I think you got to follow the rules of the home, Dad.
Jeff, I understand also. And I would be mortified if I went into somebody's house and they were angry at me for not taking my shoes off. I'll take my shoes off. I have no problem with it. But if I have the choice, I'm going to keep them on. And if someone comes into my house and says, do I have to take my shoes off? The answer is an emphatic no. You can do whatever you want. But so I was just wondering what protocol was. It just seems like the older I get, more people do not wear their shoes in the house.
Can we put it on the poll? Can we put it on the poll?
Exactly,
Do you?
Yes, I would like our listeners and our viewers to chime in on this. And again, I'm not upset. I'm certainly not angry. I'm just a little bit confused as to when this changed. And people have been doing this their entire lives. I've never done it for the reasons I told you.
We're going to have to get Dan Lebitard on this too, because this is borderline a Lebitard question. Following up, do you pee sitting down or standing up, Dad?
Stop. We're not doing that. Jeff, I have a second question, okay? So we talked about the loss of Bob Uecker, one of the greats of all time. We did that sad. In a separate, in a separate show in between our regular podcast.
Yeah. So people can see the great stories you told on our social media at Great Game or What.
Right. So I got asked maybe 15 years ago by Ryan Russillo on the Scott Van Pelt show, who's your favorite MC of all time? So there's no doubt it's Bob Uecker. I told you I went to the Brewers midwinter banquet. He was the MC. As far as I know, that means the master of ceremonies. And he completely put on a show for 3 hours, entertained and amused everyone. And Ryan, who's my friend, kind of chuckled in the background. And then when Bob Uecker died, a couple people came out on Twitter and said, do I remember correctly that Tim Kurkjian called the greatest MC ever Bob Uecker? I'm being serious here, Jeff, and I'm not upset. I'm trying to learn. What am I missing here?
So MC can also be a term for like a rapper, right? And so like some would consider Ice Cube an MC, right? Like MTV used to do MTV's hottest MCs, right? Jay-Z would be considered one of the best MCs. It's short for Master of Ceremonies, but it's also used to describe musical artists who have like really great skills as performers. So it kind of, I understand because I host events and I'm asked to be an MC all the time. But trust me, I'm not spitting any fire rhymes on a track anytime soon. Okay. All right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I didn't understand one word of that. I still think that I am in the right when they ask me who's the greatest MC ever. I think it's Bob Uecker and I'm sticking with it. And I'm not upset. I'm just trying to learn. Last thing,
Which one are you willing to give up first? Shoes in the house that you're right about what an MC is?
MC, I'm keeping my shoes on unless the host says take your shoes off, then they're coming off immediately. All right. Last thing, Jeff, I made a speech in Williamsport the other night for the Crosscutters midwinter banquet. It's 5 years in a row I've spoken in Williamsport in January. It's one of the great nights, it's freezing cold out and all these people show up and we talk baseball for 3 hours. It was absolutely fantastic again. But at the end of my little segment, I was asked, 5 questions like just answer quickly. So one of the questions was, what app have you added to your phone lately that has really been great? And I really had to hubba. I wasn't quite sure what he was talking about. But get this, Jeff, I got an answer. I had the right answer. I got the Amazon app on my phone. Kelly, your sister, added the Amazon app on my phone. So with her help now, still with her help, I can call up the app on my phone and order something from Amazon in 45 seconds. But I think that the kicker here, Jeff, is everyone in the room looked at me and said, You're 68 years old and you just figured out how to use the Amazon app. Am I really that far behind?
Yeah. I mean, Amazon has been taking over the lives of so many people's shopping habits for years and years and years. And you have to share with our listeners, what was your ever first purchase on Amazon this past Christmas season?
Well, I bought a Little Tykes Adventure rocket for Carson Keenahan, age 4, and it showed up in a box about the size of a Buick, and I dragged it over to Kelly's house, and so typical of me, Kelly put it together while I was out because it would have taken me 4 hours to put together a Little Tykes. You know how bad I am with that stuff, Jeff.
I thought your first, I'm wrong here. That's a great first thing to order on Amazon, but I thought you ordered the Dyson vacuum as well for my daughter, McKinley.
Yes.
And now, because my wife, Emily, loves our Dyson and vacuums up all the time because her and I are neat freaks. After every meal, we vacuum, after every dinner, I should say. And McKinley now has a mini Dyson vacuum that actually has a little motor in it. And every time Emily vacuums, she runs and gets that vacuum. In fact, tonight for dinner, Dad, she went and got her vacuum first and said, Mama, time. She was saying it's time to vacuum.
All right. Dyson and the Adventure Rocket pretty much came on the same day. All right. I'm going to call it a tie because I bought a vacuum cleaner for my granddaughter. How about that?
And a rocket for your grandson.
Sorry, right. And I had already bought a vacuum for my grandson 2 years ago. So I have 3 grandchildren. 2 of them have gotten a vacuum cleaner from Pop.
We won't tell poor little Emma that she hasn't gotten one yet. Right. She'll get one soon.
Right. She'll get one soon. 2 in March. She'll get her own vacuum. Yes.
Shall we dive into the 3 incredible new members as of this July when they get inducted into the Cooperstown Hall of Fame? 3 new members going in. Can we start with Ichiro Suzuki?
Yes. Okay, Jeff. One of the greatest defensive right fielders I've ever seen, and a guy that could get a hit as easily or as well as almost anyone that I've ever seen in all the years I covered baseball. Lifetime 311 hitter. He got 3,000 hits in his major league career despite a late start. Only player ever to get 200 or more hits in each of his first 10 major league seasons, including 262 hits in 2004. That is a record for one season. And Jeff, remember his rookie year, he won the Rookie of the Year and the MVP for the Mariners, a team that won 116 games. And you talk about a guy who made an impact right away. But I'll never forget that first spring, Jeff. I was talking to Lou Piniella, not the most patient man in the world, the manager of the Mariners. So it was about 3 weeks in, and Ichiro had just hit a lot of soft singles to left field. So finally, Lou, impatient, said to Ichiro, can you do anything other than hit soft singles to left field? And Ichiro points to right field and says, well, I can hit it really hard over there if you want me to. So Piniella goes, well, go ahead, hit it really hard over there. So Ichiro, of course, started a turn on the ball, and before you knew it, he had one of the great rookie seasons ever. And again, Jeff, we talk about his defense. He won 10 Gold Gloves. He's one of the greatest throwing outfielders I've ever seen. And I've told you this before, Jeff. Bobby Valentine, who knows everything about Japanese players, once told me that Ichiro is a mathematical genius. That's how his mind works. Like, he can get on an elevator and look at the numbers on the left side of the elevator and count them up in his head in like 2 seconds. He can do stuff like that. And Bobby always claims that because of his mathematical mind, that helps him as a baseball player, especially in the outfield, that he can see the angles better than anyone else. So when he runs to a ball in right center field and just is standing there when it drops in his glove, it's because he can see the angles of the field better than anyone. And Jeff, but beyond that, he was an amazing, amazing hitter. I remember his rookie year. He hit a ball that bounced before it got to home plate and hit a line drive single up the middle. So he hit a bouncing ball for a single. The next day, I called Pat Gillick, the general manager of the Mariners, and I said, Pat, what was that? And Pat just nonchalantly said, oh, he used to practice that all the time in Japan. Practice hitting a bouncing ball just in case maybe a hit and run comes up. You got to put the ball in play. And I talked to Mike Messina at that Williamsport function, and we asked him, like, give us some guys you really had a hard time with. And among the three he mentioned, Ichiro was one. And he said it was maddening because he would just foul off the pitch until he could get a ball that he could hit hard, and then he would hit it hard. That's how good Ichiro was. And I loved it, Jeff, that he treated his bats like gold. You see guys who make it out, they break their bat over their knee, or they throw it to the ground, or they slam it into the bat rack. Ichiro would take his bat and gently place it into the area where his bats were stored, because as he once told me, he said, a good carpenter never throws around his hammer. He always treats it with great integrity. And remember, on our first podcast, Eduardo Perez, when we asked him this question, he said he stole one of Ichiro's bats and used it in a game. And Ichiro was furious. Like, those are my bats. You're not supposed to be using those.
That's incredible. It gives me that last story about his bat kind of gives me shades of Tony Gwynn. Am I wrong to draw that comparison a little bit?
Tony Gwynn was the best. Tony once told me that he went to the bat company and went to the place where the bats were manufactured so he could pick out the billets of wood and watch his bat being made. That's how precise he was. And just to finish with Ichiro, Jeff, I'll never forget that first spring training. We're all trying to figure out who is this guy. And I did one of the first interviews with him in spring training. We're sitting in chairs on the field in Arizona at their spring training facility. And with the help of an interpreter, I asked Ichiro, like, what is it about the United States that he really likes? And he goes, hamburgers, love them. And then I said, well, what is it about the United States that you don't like? And he said, everything breaks here. It's like nothing is built well. And then he pauses and he looks at me and he goes, be careful. That chair you're sitting in might collapse any second. That's what Ichiro told me. So even though I don't think he needed an interpreter, it was good that he used one. He understands the language exceptionally well. And this has always fascinated me, Jeff, is that Ichiro has been to the Hall of Fame many times before being inducted, okay? Because he just loves the history of the game. And he didn't go there thinking, I'll be here one day. He just loves the history of baseball. And what better place to diagram the history of baseball than Cooperstown, New York?
And I want to just take a quick second to note that, speaking of baseball bats, we are planning an episode with our friends at Victus Sports, the new official bat of Major League Baseball. Dad, we're going to be doing a podcast from their location, their headquarters in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, which happens to be just 20 minutes from where we normally do the podcast, in my basement in Pennsylvania. And so we're going to be doing an episode from there. So we're going to be able to get a lot more great bat stories. I know you just told that great Tony Gwynn one. And of course, Ichiro, a great number of bat stories on him. So save more bat stories for our next episode when we're at Victus Sports in February. Let's move on to our next inductee set to join Ichiro and the other Hall of Famers in July. It's CC Sabathia.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure. I voted for him, of course, but I wasn't sure if he was going to make it on the first ballot. But when you win 251 games with a winning percentage above 600 and more than 3,000 strikeouts, That's a pretty good list. In fact, Sabathia is one of only 6 pitchers ever to have all 3 of those numbers: 250 wins, 600 winning percentage, 3,000 strikeouts. The others are Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, Tom Seaver, Justin Verlander, Greg Maddux, CC Sabathia. That is
Wow.
quite, and again, only Randy Johnson and Steve Carlton struck out more batters among left-handed pitchers in the history of the game. And Sabathia, one of the things that really separated him was his willingness to take the ball. The year he was traded to the Brewers for the stretch run and then went, 11-2 with an ERA under 2, then pitched on short rest in a free agent year, meaning he's risking his health anytime you pitch on short rest. He said, just give me the ball. Our goal is to win the World Series. And even though they didn't, he pitched like crazy. So he was a huge man, is a huge man, 6'7", at his best, around 300 pounds. And by the way, Jeff, one year he lost a lot of weight and he pitched poorly. And he whispered to me a couple of years later, he said, I'm a big guy. I pitch better when I'm big, not when I'm light. And also,
Wow.
Jeff, for a guy that big, he's a great athlete, great basketball player, played tight end in high school on the football team. And I did a demo with Aaron Boone once in spring training about the third baseman, what he's supposed to do on a ball bunted down the third baseline when there are runners on base. So Boone's explaining you have to know who your pitcher is to know if you're going to charge the bunt and you make the play as the third baseman, throw to first, or you stay at your bag because you know the pitcher is going to be able to cover the third base line. So I said, give me the pitcher who you never had to worry about. You could always stay at the bag because you knew he was going to get to that bunt. And the first guy he said was CC Sabathia, which I found interesting because people look at him and say, oh, he's a big, heavy guy. He can't be quick. He can't be athletic. Both of those are not true. He's quick. He's athletic. He's a tremendous athlete. And that's one reason why he's in the Hall of Fame. And Jeff, he's also the greatest player ever to go by his initials. We got some other ones, JT Real Muto, JD Martinez, JJ
yep.
Hardy. We've got a lot of them, but the greatest player ever to go by his initials is CC Sabathia.
Well, maybe later in the season, I don't want to put you on the spot now. We'll do a best of all Tim only initials team.
Oh, I've got that. I could give it to you right off the top of my head, but we're not going to do that tonight. Yes. Okay.
JJ Hardy starting, of course.
Shortstop.
We won't get into it.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
All right. And
go ahead.
Last but certainly not least, joining the Hall of Fame this summer, it's Billy Wagner.
And he made it, Jeff, in his final year eligible. And I'm so happy for Billy Wagner because he came so close in year number 9 that if he didn't make it in 10, that would have been a crushing blow. Look, he saved 422 games, Jeff. That's the 8th most of all time. He had a 2.31 ERA. That's exceptionally low for that many innings. He struck out 11.9 batters per 9 innings for his career. But the number you need to know is he averaged, if you're not rounding up, 5.99 hits per 9 innings in his career. That is the lowest hits per 9 innings of any pitcher in the history of the game with at least 900 innings pitched. Billy Wagner was absolutely unhittable at his best. And Jeff, as you know, he's like 5'10", even though he's really closer to 5'8". And he used to throw the ball like it looked like it was, he short-armed it. It was like it came out of his jersey. All sorts of hitters say they could never pick up the ball when Billy Wagner was throwing it. And again, at 5'8", let's say, I remember when Randy Johnson got traded to the Astros in midseason one year, And Billy Wagner is on the Astros. And the first time he meets Randy Johnson, who's, of course, 6'10", says, I'm a foot taller than that guy, and he throws harder than I do. It's unbelievable. And it's true. He threw really, really hard. And the amazing part, Jeff, was he's a natural right-handed thrower.
Mm-hmm.
And he hurt his arm as a kid, badly, his right arm as a kid. And at age 5, he had to learn how to throw left-handed. So here's a guy who struck out 11.9 guys per 9 innings, threw 100 miles an hour left-handed, and he's a natural right-handed thrower. So I asked him, I said, Billy, I mean, you had to start all over. How did you develop the arm strength? Now, he grew up in rural Virginia. He used to tell me one of the delicacies they used to eat was woodchuck. I'm not even sure what a woodchuck is, but I'm not sure I want to eat one of them. But Billy was a guy from rural Virginia. So he said, well, I developed my arm strength. I would go out in the field in our backyard, and I would throw a baseball as far as I could, and then I'd go pick it up and I'd throw it back. So I said, Billy, you had a whole bag of balls, right? And he goes, no, I only had one ball. So he would throw it 300 feet in the air, go pick it up and throw it back, go pick it up. So his version of long toss he did as a young kid. That's one reason why he developed the strength in his arm. Now, look, Jeff, there are a lot of people out there that have a natural bias against relief pitchers, okay? And when you throw 903 innings in your career, there is a question, how valuable can you be when you don't even pitch 1,000 innings in your career? That's the biggest reason Billy Wagner took 10 years to get in. He didn't pitch enough innings. My thinking on this, Jeff, is the closer role is a role. It's a job, and it's been there since 1969. All he's doing is doing what his team asked him to do, and he did it exceptionally well.
I think that's a very good point because he stepped up when it was needed for many a team. So congratulations, Ichiro Suzuki, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner, soon to be the newest members of the Cooperstown Hall of Fame. In July, they will be inducted. Really looking forward to that, Dad. I know you'll be there. Last year, we interviewed Johnny Bench and Dan Shaughnessy at the Otesaga. It was a great experience, and I'm hoping and praying that we get a chance to be up there again this year, Dad, and maybe score another interview with another Hall of Famer. That would be really, really cool.
Absolutely. We'll try to get Johnny Bench again. He was that good. We could go another round, and it would be just as good.
It would be just as easy. All right, Dad, so we don't normally do this, so we're doing this episode virtually. We do it sometimes in my basement. This one we're doing virtually because we had to delay when this episode would come out by almost an entire day because of the announcement of those Hall of Famers that just got let in, right? So I thought we would do an oldie but a goodie. Should we open a deck of cards for It's in the Cards?
Yeah, first though, Jeff, I want to show you the baseball card that you had made when you were probably, I don't know, what is this, 7 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old?
Year 2000, that would have been 6 or 7 years old, yeah.
Yeah, this, of course, is actual size for Jeffrey. He was a really little kid like his poor dad.
Is that when I played for the Tampa Bay Devil Rays?
Yes.
Back in the day?
Yeah, you've got your Devil Rays shirt on there. And the team wasn't very good, but that's because if they had just been called the Rays, they would have been good. Because remember, the Devil Rays were never any good till they got the devil out of their name. Never mind.
I'll be honest with you. I remember so vividly every year when we would become a new team, right? You get your team, and then all the kids would wear those hats. So no matter where you grew up, right? I grew up in Maryland. You could end up being the Yankees or something. And when we became the Devil Rays, I hated it because our jerseys were black and it was so hot standing in the outfield, which was where I normally played. Standing in the outfield as a 7-year-old in T-ball and just sweating my butt off. And then you remember the year, Dad, we've got in our league, we had the Phillies, we had the Yankees, we had the Red Sox, we had all of the big powerhouses, right? And do you remember what my team was? no disrespect, we were the Durham Bulls.
Oh my gosh. You didn't even,
Listen,
weren't even a
we weren't
major
even
league.
a major league team.
Poor
And I mean, no disrespect. I love the Durham Bulls. I love minor league baseball. But like when you're going up against the Yankees and the Cubs, I don't think the Durham Bulls are going to win a game. And I don't think we did.
Right. I'm with you on that. All right, let's look at the baseball cards.
All right. So I'm going to open them up right here. I haven't followed the search for the Paul Skeens rookie card. This is the Topps Chrome. I bought these like a long time ago,
Okay.
and we've been opening them up slowly but surely. So let's see what we started with. A good one to start with, Dad. Ronald Acuna Jr.
Jeff, he's an amazing talent. Chipper Jones told me a couple years ago that Ronald Acuna Jr. is the most talented player he's ever seen wear a major league uniform. That comes from Chipper Jones. Acuna Jr.'s power to right center is ridiculous. He is, of his power everywhere. He is a weapon with the way he throws and plays right field defensively. And of course, he is breathtakingly fast. So and they just got to get him healthy. He's been hurt twice. Well, I don't even think he's going to be ready for opening day with the injury he went down with last year. But when he's healthy, he's as good as any player in the league.
Manny Machado is our next pull, San Diego Padres.
Yeah, Manny is a future Hall of Famer. He's got a real shot someday to get to 3,000 hits. He's one of the maybe 6 or 7 greatest defensive third basemen I've ever seen. And, I was there when the Orioles brought him up at age 19. And I'll never forget, he had been sent to the minor leagues, Jeff, coming out of spring training. And Buck Showalter, the manager of the Orioles, looked at John Russell, like his bench coach, like early in the year, and they needed a third baseman, and he said, who should we bring up? And John Russell said, Manny Machado. The next day, they needed a catcher to come up, and Buck Showalter said, John, who should we bring up? And he said, Manny Machado. And the day after that, they needed a pitcher to come up, and he asked John Russell, who should we bring up? And he said, Manny Machado. And remember, when Machado came up that year, he was great right away and helped get the Orioles into the playoffs.
And in this pack, at least, the last one is Vlad Guerrero Jr., a little holographic chrome card. I'm so bad with opening cards. To my true baseball card fans, I'm sorry. I'm not updated on all the verbiage, but there we go.
Well, Vladdy Jr., of course, had a great 2024 season. And with the money that Juan Soto got in free agency, it's going to get a lot more money for Vladdy Jr. I think the Blue Jays, if they are intent on winning long term, they need to re-sign him to a mega deal. We'll see if that happens. But, for as young as he is, and he's still unbelievably young, to have this kind of track record and this future as a hitter, I think in a lot of ways he's a bit underrated as a hitter.
And, the Blue Jays just signed Santander. And, that was a big signing, 5 years. So they look like they're building. So signing Vladdy Jr. would be huge. Those two guys would be great. Right.
And with Bo Bichette, the Blue Jays obviously had to do something to keep pace with the Red Sox, who are better. Obviously, the Yankees are really good, and so are the Orioles.
And that's the whole deck for you, Dad.
All right, good. Hey, we always do, Jeff, this date in baseball history. So I was looking up January 22nd, and which I do this every single day of my life because I love to see what happened on this date. So in 1976, Robin Roberts and Bob Lemon went into the Hall of Fame. Now, Robin Roberts is one of the great pitchers ever. He won 286 games. But when I interviewed at ESPN late in 1997, so this is my big interview to see if I'm going to leave Sports Illustrated and go to ESPN. I have one interview. A cab driver picks me up and drives me to ESPN from the airport, 1997. He says to me, I just dropped off one of my favorite people of all time, Robin Roberts. So I go, yeah, he's one of the greatest pitchers ever. One of the whiz kids, won 286 games, an unbelievably durable pitcher, pitched for some really good Phillies teams. Finally, the guy turns around the cab driver and says, "Who are you talking about?" I said, "I'm talking about Robin Roberts, one of the greatest pitchers of all time." And he goes, "No, I'm talking about the Robin Roberts, who, of course, was an ESPN personality, show host, reporter, everything. And now, of course, she's made it in so many different ways. She's wonderful. Good Morning America, that Robin Roberts." But Dopey Dad, when you mention Robin Roberts, the first name that comes to mind is the baseball player, not the beautiful ESPN on-air personality.
That is so funny. And, it's got me thinking. I always think of best of all Tim teams. You need to do a team of shared famous names. Like you could do Carlos Santana, right? Obviously, longtime major leaguer and guitarist.
Right. I did the all music team, Jeff.
Yep.
You'd be proud of me. I figured out who Chris Martin was.
Chris Martin.
Lead singer of
Coldplay, of course.
Coldplay, right. There you go. And he's pitched in the big leagues for several years. We'll finish, Jeff, with a sad note, but I'll try to make it okay. 2021 on this date, Hank Aaron died. Hank Aaron is one of the 5 greatest players of all time for me. Very good defensive right fielder, tremendous base runner, and obviously one of the greatest hitters of all time. Jeff, if you took away all 755 of his homers, he still had 3,000 hits. And I told you, Jeff, before I started doing this podcast, and I mean this sincerely, the highlight of my entire career was a game that we did in Atlanta maybe 8 years ago, Dave Fleming, Eduardo Perez, and myself. And Hank Aaron was our guest. And he sat in the booth during a major league game with us for 4 innings and was part of the broadcast. Jeff, I stopped keeping score of the game because I was no longer interested in the game because I was so captivated by the guy sitting next to me, Hank Aaron. He was so funny. He was so charming, and his recall on everything was unbelievable. So we have this amazing hour and a half on the air with Hank Aaron. Game's over. I checked Twitter. Never, Jeff, a good idea to check Twitter after you've broadcast a game. Never. But some guy wrote in. He said, "If anyone ever looks at you the way that Tim Kurkjian looked at Hank Aaron tonight, you should marry that person." That's how mesmerized I was sitting next to Hank Aaron, who died on this date 4 years ago. What a gentleman. What a baseball player.
What a beautiful way as well to wrap up today's podcast. We want to thank you all so much for listening. Remember, our 2025 regular season back to weekly episodes is going to start on March the 18th. So we're still doing every other week for episodes, and we're a little late for this one because of the Hall of Fame announcement. But March 18th, folks, we are getting so close to pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training. We're so excited for baseball to be back in season 2 of Is This a Great Game or What? Dad, I love you so much. I enjoy doing this with you more than you will ever understand. It is, I've been looking forward to getting back on the show with you. I don't like doing it every other week, but I just thank you for doing this with me because it has been a dream come true.
Well, feelings mutual here, Jeff, but I gotta go. I gotta order something on the Amazon app, okay?
Thank you for listening, and as always, thank you for being a part of our family.